Hey, welcome to a new episode of the You Got the Ron Dude podcast. I'm your host, Ron Jammin. Thank you very much for tuning in. Podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and SoundCloud, where you can also download the episode for free. Today's episode, my review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Thankfully, I didn't pay to see this. I was thinking about it. It's going to be on Paramount Plus, I think, next month. But there was some good stuff in it, but I'll just say the reviews I saw, people weren't wrong. So I'm going to break down the good, the bad, the ugly. And there are spoilers throughout, so you've been warned. But anyways, let's get right into it. Well, my notes are all over the place. So let's start with, people were not wrong. A lot of flashbacks, tons of exposition, to the point where it's like they're really trying to connect most of the movies to this. And, our lives are the sum of our choices and stuff. And it's like, well, these movies were never building towards a finale. That's the problem. And despite all the exposition about what's going to happen, we have, all these new devices, a lot of new characters, and it's kind of like, but this is it, right? But good gosh, 72 hours, 3 days. Soon it'll all be over. Got it. Check. Stop. I don't know. Maybe the studio execs were like, well, we only get our bonus if this movie's, about 3 hours. Because the theaters are like, well, we got to sell more popcorn. They'll likely need a refill after the first hour. But I don't understand it. There was no reason for this movie to be over 2 hours and 10 minutes. And some stuff I would have moved around. But you want to keep people guessing also. And, with all the loose ends in that, it's kind of like, well, are we setting up for another one? The Final Reckoning? Is there going to be a Dead Reckoning Part 2? I mean, everyone's great in their roles. But I imagine reading the script and they're like, just like in Dead Reckoning when they say key, 100 times. And it's like, got it. And were people messaging Macquarie being like, the key, that's it? Can't you have like 3 more things? More devices? Oh, okay. But there's no reason for all these conversations and just reiterating the same point. And especially when we're already on the clock and it's like we have 3 days and we keep meeting and discussing, the fate of everything. And it's like, well, let's plan stuff and go. And it's just hard to follow, the timing of everything. So our team's over here. How long did it take them to get there? And then they go rescue Ethan. Then we meet in South Africa. And it's kind of like, okay, and Ethan was asleep for a while after his submarine thing. How long? He would have been out for a while, right? But it doesn't make things more confusing. It's just a waste of time. Because I'd rather, instead of all the exposition and flashbacks, we focus on the loss of Ilsa that happened recently. Maybe some conversations, maybe a little bit more with Grace and Kittredge, because that they kind of abandoned. And what other names do I have here? Oh, of course, Marie, what happened with her? Because we don't know why Gabriel killed her. They just didn't even address it for whatever reason. So Chris McQuarrie, I mean, if he burned out or is just like, you know what, there's no way this one is better than Dead Reckoning, I don't think. The set pieces are great, the visuals, the sound and all that, but other than that, it's like, maybe you think people want more conversations about what's going to happen. This leads to that, and if we do this, we have to get over there, get back here. plug this into that, and they have to be there, and all this stuff, and it's just like, okay. It's not a bad movie. There's some good stuff in it, but you just want to cut out a bunch. One thing that didn't really go anywhere, or you could have cut it out completely, has no impact on the movie. The Jim Phelps Jr. reveal, it had no heart to it. If it had been teased at the end of the first one, Dead Reckoning Part 1, you'd be like, oh, he's really going after Ethan. But there's just no build-up with this 2-part finale. It's just like, can we do an Infinity War Endgame? And it's like, I don't know. It's possible, but all the other movies are so, on their own. Like, Rogue Nation and Fallout are connected because of Solomon Lane. But introducing a new villain and then all these new characters. But the Phelps thing, for some reason, Chris wants to go back to the first movie. And I'll get into the William Dunlow stuff, because that I actually liked. I didn't think I would. But, that's okay. But the Phelps thing, it just didn't go anywhere. They end up shaking hands, and it's just one of those, why? Why that? It has no impact on the plot whatsoever. Ethan, I'm Jim Phelps Jr. Your dad was Jim Phelps. Okay, well, hey, nice to meet you. Sorry about your dad, and he had some troubles. So we're both on this plane, and that reminds me, I wrote this down. Some of the scenes, I had to turn the volume up, way up. They're very soft-spoken for some reason. And it's like, what are you hiding from? You don't want to wake somebody up. It's like, we're on a mission to save the world. 3-day window. But yeah, it's a shame. Because maybe they could have set that up in other movies. Or maybe have Brant's character reveal that. Even though that wouldn't really fit in with everything. But something like that. Despite all the new devices, new characters, no mask reveal. Just kind of disappointing. This movie needed a really good twist. And I just talked about, they did the Jim Phelps Jr. thing, but it's like, okay, he's not trying to kill Ethan. He just wants him captured, and I think that was a late addition. In this movie, they're just like, well, maybe they were tired of the mask thing, and they're like, we need something intriguing. And it's like, write better. Do better. Because no one was ever like, oh, did Jim Phelps have a son or, a family that we could know of? But the mask thing, because you think about it, because in the finale, so we see Gabriel and his henchmen escape from the tunnel. But then there must have been a switch, because Gabriel's lunatic on the plane. Now, some were saying, well, it's because he lost, and he knew he did, and he just went crazy, and it's like, that was not Gabriel. When the plane is upside down, and Ethan, he is staring at the poison pill. By the way, do they need to keep cutting to that? We get it. It's around Gabriel's neck. Got it. But they're upside down, and then Gabriel is saying something. He's yelling maniacally. And aren't we supposed to hear that? Shouldn't it be audible? And when Ethan breaks his arm, the way he reacts, it's just like, okay, so Ethan wins, Gabriel, gets his nuts smashed, breaks his head open. That part I did like. When he hits his head on the tail, but the nut crunch thing, that's more of a death for a henchman. Kind of a cartoon villain kind of death. Maybe the guy in the red plane could have went out like that, and we're like, ooh, that's brutal. But Gabriel, so he falls to his death. Let's say Kittredge and Jim Phelps Jr., whatever, they go to his body first before going to Ethan. And my phone just dinged. Hopefully you didn't hear that. But so they go to Gabriel's body, and they notice on his neck somewhere you can see like something's come undone. You realize it's a mask. Pull it off, and I was thinking Solomon Lane. I really wished he would have been part of this 2-part finale, but he wouldn't have been that maniacal, that lunatic. But just have a reveal like, oh, okay, so he made the switch, and eventually Gabriel will go after Ethan for the drive containing the AI. Something like that. But I mean, it doesn't ruin the movie or anything, but there was just a good opportunity throughout. Just to be like, oh, you're not so-and-so. Okay, let's get into some of the new characters and recurring from the last movie. Theo and Paris, I like their character arcs, but Theo didn't really have, like a grand send-off or a lot to do. And I thought that he William, and or his wife would have been sacrificed at the end. Self-sacrificing. Because they wanted to get to the server room, but they all survive, and it's not disappointing or anything. It's nice, but you figure with him, he's like, I'll stay behind, and I know, I really like the character. The actor is really good in the role, but just not given a lot to do. Whereas Paris, it seemed like, she might turn on everybody and, abandon ship. But this actor named Tramell Tillman, who played Captain Jack aboard one of the submarines, the guy who went, you must be out your damn mind. Now that, he'd be great in a single cam show. Because his delivery, the look on his face, I just laughed. Not hysterically, but I thought, is this from a show or something? Like, I'm not saying he can't be serious. He did great in his role, but that delivery, it's like, oh, I'd put him, like a Parks and Rec office kind of show. And Admiral Neely, another new character, has a connection to May 22nd, 1996, which is when the first Mission Impossible came out. And they said, Ethan lost somebody that day, so did she. But we don't know who. What's the point of that? It's supposed to be her motivation to do something, but wouldn't it be a direct order from the president? See, I'm not asking. This is your order. So that's another kind of loose end, and it's like, we've never met this person. Why should we feel anything? They lost someone, which is sad, but it's like, you take that out, it has nothing to do. Because you're under orders. Now, 3 days the world's going to end. Maybe you're like, if I get fired, we got a couple days left anyways. But no, you're trained. You follow orders. You take orders. So that could have been a big reveal. Like, I figured she had some connection to maybe one of Ethan's team members. In the first Mission Impossible. The one he started out with, and then the one that they built. But then it's like, do you just abandon that? Is she going to be in a spin-off or a sequel? And wanted to see Jeremy Renner as Brandt, because that went nowhere. Now, I don't remember reading about a fallout or anything. Not to that movie. But he was in Ghost Protocol and then in Rogue Nation for a bit, but then we don't see him again. And initially he was going to take over for Tom Cruise, kind of take over the team, but that didn't happen, obviously, after 4. But just something, have him at the end, he steps in, Mrs. President, don't give up, this guy, he won't stop at anything to save the world. Vouches for him, and even if it's just like a minute cameo or something, or have him in that boardroom when they're all meeting, because I also thought about bringing back, now, I don't know how this would work, but the past IMF directors, because, again, from the first movie they brought back Kittredge, and I was like, that's an interesting choice, but even with that, there was no big reveal or setup or anything. It was just like, oh, hi, Ethan, I'm back. But Hopkins from 2, Fishburne from 3, because it's like, what happened to them? But imagine all these people in the room. Like, what do? We wait. And Hunt, he saved the world before, him and his team, he'll do it again. But the lack of communication at the same time, it's kind of like, well, they couldn't get a hold of anyone on the team. And the president, it's good to see Erica again, but even that, it's like, well, why bring her back? There wasn't a lot of reveals or anything, or twists in this movie. Just very underwhelming. And I get it if you're like, well, I really like this, the first Mission Impossible, I want to connect a few things to that. And it's like, yeah, but there was no demand for it, and there was no mystery or anything. But those are just some ideas I have. And William Dunlow, like I said, I like that a lot. Him and his wife, and all that was reasonable. And he's not even like forgiving. He's just like, dude, I've married my wife, I'm out here, I work here, and seems to have a good life in that. So that was very sweet. And him knowing about, the possible takeover, and he said, 10 years ago I warned them, we got to build a better system or something. And I was like, see, that I like. Because they're not just throwing him into the mix. Like, he has a purpose in this. So that was well done. Well, more into characters. The White Widow, would have liked to have seen her in this one. Again, maybe a cameo or something. I like what they did with her in Dead Reckoning Part 1. And that was a lot. So I didn't really miss her character in this. There wasn't really room for her, but maybe if she was on Ethan's team or something. Or maybe a post-credit scene where she's breaking out Solomon Lane. Because maybe she wants, the entity, the control of it. And she says, I need this physical drive with the AI on it. And I need you to help get it. And then at the very end, Ethan Hunt will return. But Solomon is just a great character. Very cunning, very dangerous, thrilling, unpredictable. Luther, his death was sad, very philosophical in the end. I like when he talks tech in that and does exposition. Not all the exposition in this case. This was overload. But not on his part, but just everyone else. But I think it was well done. It's unfortunate. But there was no time to breathe, really. It was just on to the next thing. Let's see. What other characters do I have here? I mentioned Solomon. Oh, and with Grace, now I thought, because it was kind of the same scenario, because he had the bars, the fence gates, and when they're chasing down Gabriel in the beginning, I thought, ooh, maybe he's going to kill Grace, just like Marie. Because it looked like the same location even. But they didn't really do anything with that. Not that I wanted her to die, but imagine that in the beginning of the movie. Grace is dead? Jeez. But yeah, there are plenty of characters in this movie. But like I said, even with the ending, it's kind of like, let's all just glare at each other and then nod and walk away, and very underwhelming. But with the White Widow, see her in other movies or something. And I feel like I'm forgetting something on here, but... Oh, Julia. Now, I like how they used her in Fallout, and how that concluded when Ethan's in the hospital bed. That was really sweet. Like, they both moved on, and, they made a choice. And in this one, it was nice how they tied it to 3. I like the rabbit's foot, the inclusion of that, which I'll get into in a little bit. But with her, no, I guess we already kind of got closure on that. So even if we saw her, it probably wouldn't fit, with everything going on. But yeah, I like how they handled that. Well, I remember, I think it was maybe the last trailer, or one of them, when we saw a glimpse of Ethan retrieving the rabbit's foot. And this was a shot that wasn't even in Mission Impossible 3, because he just jumps out of the building, so we never see him actually retrieve it. So that I liked, and people were like, is that the rabbit's foot? And, which obviously was a code name in that. So you hear it on radio in that, and people are like, oh, they're just talking about some bunny appendage. But I like the idea of using that in this, but because it was a chemical compound, like a liquid, using that, because in 3, Benji talks about, the anti-god. Because he says if somebody's willing to pay this amount of money for this, it signals the end of the world. And I'm like, see, that I would extract that into this, but how does it become, I think it was the Podkova, the device Ethan steals from the submarine. The, Sevastopol. So I'm like, that's a good connection, but the liquid thing, and then where was it? Because Ethan turned it in, and Brassel said, if you want me to tell you what it is, promise me you'll stay. But Ethan wants to go on his honeymoon. It's like, okay, it was a good MacGuffin. So I wonder how JJ feels about it. Because he directed 3, produced 4, and then on from that, I'm not sure his involvement. But I do like that, connecting it. But it's just like, well, it was liquid. So how did it become this coding for this AI? But I like it. That's a connection. It's like, okay, because 3 was great. And Gabriel, when he mentions, in the beginning when Ethan and Grace are captured, something familiar about this. Shanghai. What was her name? Julia. I like that. And again, it's like, oh gosh, is he going to kill Grace and then do the mask reveal like she wasn't there? But pickpocketed those guys. So be like, oh, maybe they really took over for her. But just like William Dunlow from the first movie, the way they used him in this was well done. So good, but this one, again, it's just explaining how that became a code. A device, essentially. Because now, thinking out loud, because remember in 2 they had Chimera and Bellerophon, the virus and antivirus. So maybe in 3 they were worried about, well, wait, this biohazard labeled chemical weapon, is this the same as 2? And they're like, yes, but we're not going to address it. It's just the thing everybody's after. So it's like, okay. But I'm curious what you think, so leave some comments. Well, for me, the highlights of this movie, submarine, the Sevastopol that Ethan goes into, that entire sequence, beautifully done, visually, sound design, the music score. Definitely wanted to see that in theaters and IMAX. And then the finale with Ethan chasing Gabriel when they're on the biplanes and then cutting back to our team. You could say, like, well, there's just too much back and forth. And it's like, no, but the plane thing was really, really mesmerizing. Because you might find it boring because it's like the wide shots in the trailers are like ketchup and mustard planes. Like, don't tell me that's the finale. But all the stunts, all the moving around in that that Ethan does, like, it's really captivating. And just like the submarine thing, would have been great to see that on the big screen, because very, very thrilling. Very well done. A lot of great shots in there. And like I said earlier, I mean, all the characters do a great job. They're doing their best, but it's just one of those, you wonder what they were thinking, because, again, nothing against Chris. I mean, he's done a great job, but, I think back to the Russo brothers. They did Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. So those 4 movies alone, because you had a lot of others, in between those. But these characters, it's like, okay, we're going to go to the next one. We're going to build up towards this finale. And I don't even think that Cruise is done, really. But it just seemed like maybe the studio's like, well, we're not done with Cruise by any means, but he is getting older. And Ghost Protocol was supposed to be his last one, but here we are, the 8th one. But like I mentioned earlier, Rogue Nation and Fallout were kind of connected, which I really liked. Those 2 are in my top, I would say top 8. There are only 8 of them. But those are really great movies. But point being, there was no actual build-up to a finale. So the AI thing was teased, and, if it were teased in Fallout or something, or have a credit scene leading into the next one, that would have been interesting. But this one was just packed with so many new elements, and, you have the key. That I'm not sure what happened to it. Because remember Ethan inserting it into that lock and then turning it, and then it's just on to the Podkova, the poison pill, and then the physical drive to store the AI, and it's like, good gosh, why weren't those things at least set up in the first one? Not the very first movie, but Dead Reckoning Part 1. Oh, and kind of a side note here, when Ethan turns himself in, and they mention the Kremlin bombing, saying actually it was meant for him. Kittredge says that, and he kind of smirks, and it's like, well, is that a joke? I don't know. Because looking back on that movie, it's like, really? But nobody talks about it. Nobody addresses it. They just move on, and it's kind of like, well, that was awkward. But again, trying to connect all the movies, and it's just like, there's no need to, and they weren't built like that. Now, 1 and 3, the Rabbit's Foot and Dunlow and that, those were clever, those worked, but other than that, you figured they'd all go wide-eyed, and Kittredge is like, I'm just effing with you. You're good, Hunt, don't worry. But it's just one of those, cut that out of the movie. Just like the Phelps thing, it's like, it has no impact on anything at all. And it's not bad writing, it's an attempt, it's a failed attempt. Because it's one thing when you try to retcon things and it doesn't work out. In this case, it's just like, all the flashbacks from the movies, but maybe they have a flashback to Jim and his dad, Jim Sr., and something like that, where oh, here comes this twist, But it's a shame, because I really wanted to love this movie, and I was like, I think people are probably exaggerating about the exposition and the flashbacks, but my gosh, I have never seen so much in the first hour of a movie. And Benji, I really like his character throughout these movies, because he's never annoying, and he does a great job, and he's always helpful. But as far as him taking over the team, it's like, well, he's been in a lot of these movies already. So he started out in 3, and Field Agent, I believe, in 4, and in 5, if Renner had taken over with Benji, that would have been interesting. But there's just no need. I don't feel, I'd still like to see Benji, but there's no need for he'll step up. And I wonder how the actor feels about it, Simon. Because it's like, well, even when Ethan says, the team is yours, take care of him. He's not coming back. And then he survives with, a few scratches. And it's like, But I thought I was in line to, okay, no, never mind. But it's just like, well, what is the plan? I don't know if you'd consider this a plot hole. Out of everything that happened, all the obstacles, all the new devices, new characters, exposition. So, this movie takes place 2 months after the events of Dead Reckoning Part 1. You know what stood out to me in the trailers? How the heck did Ethan's hair grow so much so fast in 2 months? None of the other characters' hair changed at all, I don't think. Or not as much, but now obviously Ethan's not going to have time to go to Great Clips or something, or maybe he, knows some safe house where they can cut his hair, but that's the thing that stood out to me the most in this movie. Now, obviously, he takes great care of himself, and it's just one of those things, like, that's the thing, unfortunately, that stood out to me about this movie. I mean, his hair got really long, and it was pretty short in Dead Reckoning. But let me know if you noticed that too and what you think of it. Maybe it wasn't Ethan the whole time, huh? Good mask reveal. Well, last I checked, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning holds a 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb. Surprisingly, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Ooh, I should have looked if that was the audience score or critics. But either way, that's a pretty high score for this movie. Because of all the stuff they don't address, kind of skipped over, just abandoned from the first one, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the exposition and the flashbacks and that. But visually, great movie. It's up there with all the other ones visually, and the soundtrack I really liked. I wish we would have heard, I don't know if it was Ethan and Julia's theme, but that end music from 3. I believe it was a different composer. That was Michael Giacchino, however you pronounce it. But when we do get to action, it's really intense, really thrilling. Oh, I forgot to mention submarine, when Ethan gets attacked on board that one before he goes to the Sevastopol. Cutting between that and then our heroes in the cabin getting attacked in that. That was really well done. But overall, there's some good stuff in this. It is rewatchable, but not the entire thing. Seriously, I would skip past the first hour. I think it was 10 minutes. And, gosh. Considering everything, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Because that's about what we got as far as balance and, build up to a big finale. And even at the end, like I said, our characters meet up. And Grace gives Ethan the drive with the AI on it. And it's kind of like, really? Despite all those meetings and people talking about the plot, like, there's no meeting at the end about what do we do from here and why does Ethan have it? Because outside of the team, I don't think anyone knew about their plan. But what about another meeting between Ethan and the president? Or him and his team and the president? But they just look at each other, nod, and walk away, and it's like, see you in the next one. There's just no grand send-off or anything. And even the music, I wanted it to be more riveting throughout. But it just sucks. $300 to $400 million is the budget. Made about $600 million worldwide in theaters. Which is a great number, but not when... Because keep in mind, budgets between $300 and $400 million, that's not including the marketing. Which is about the same. And, I wouldn't call it a flop necessarily, but, as far as the reviews, but box office, unfortunately, I just couldn't imagine sitting there. I actually sat through the entire thing because I'm like, I want to get to that plane chase at the end. But like I said, I mean, I'd skip quite a bit of it because you want to leave things up to mystery. A spy, espionage, and they're just like, well, I'll just paint the whole picture for you, but not address everything. And even that tape in the beginning, now that I think about it, how did Erica get that to Ethan and or Benji? Just like when they meet with Luther, and it's like, well, how did he must have reached out to them, but if he's off the grid, but I mean, I'd watch, even the action in that. I mean, I wouldn't watch it outside of the movie, so I'm going to stick with my 5 out of 10, though. It's a good, fair movie. You see it on the big screen, like, oh, wow, and just so much talking versus people moving around and action and stuff. But anyways, I'd love to hear from you. So leave some comments, like, rate. I was going to say view. Subscribe, follow, share, all that fun stuff. Podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and SoundCloud, where you can also download it for free. And you figure the last one would be like, it's impossible. We just can't do it. There's no time. And then people are like, is there the last reckoning? But yeah, I'd love to hear from you. So let me know what you think of the movie. And just an underwhelming, I wouldn't even call it a finale. Because at one point I was like, well, I'd leave him not for dead, but I'd leave people thinking he's dead. So he falls and he has his parachute, but in the clouds we kind of lose him. He plugs in the device, and that way you can see him again in, a spin-off or a reboot. And then his whole team dying, in that cabin or something. Or maybe not in the cabin, maybe in the South African, in the cave, something like that. But just to really, gut punch, oh my gosh, none of them survived. And it's like, well, the mission's possible, but surviving isn't. Again, not that I want to get rid of any of these characters or anything, but something like, we're going to win, and then it just, it just surprises you, and it's like only some of them or none of them survive. But yeah, let me know what you think, and that's all my notes. So I will see you next time. Check out my review of Dead Reckoning Part 1. And then I have another podcast episode all about Mission Impossible, kind of going through the other movies and that. So check those out. But thanks for listening. I will see you next time. Oh gosh. If you choose to accept it, no. Drawing a blank. This movie wasn't very quotable either. Like the guy who played Gabriel, I like his voice in that, but just that turn in the end is like, who is this guy? Only one of us has a parachute. Good luck. Then the nut slam. Ooh. Your team has been betrayed, Ethan. That was maybe the only quote that stood out. But I really wanted more from Gabriel. We don't really see him much. But, okay, anyways, that's my review. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to listen to all episodes of my podcast. If you fail to do so, well, that's your choice. See you next time. Thanks again.